Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another video in the Python series. In this video, I'll be teaching you about while loops. Alright guys, welcome back. Now you know how to do for loops and nested for loops, so now I'm going to teach you about while loops, which is another way of looping, which is very similar, but a little different. So let's just jump right into it. Let's see how a while loop looks like. So usually you're going to have while, and then a condition, and then a colon, and then you're going to have the code. So it's different from a for loop just because for loops are not exactly based on a condition. For loops are kind of more made for looping through lists and sets of values, which is pretty cool. But sometimes you need to loop based on a condition, and this is one way you could do that. And a condition, again, is just something that evaluates to true or false, a Boolean value. So if we do true, then this will be a infinite while loop. And so anything that's inside of that while loop will run continually, looping over and over and over. So we'll say tacos are amazing. So if we run this now, let's see what happens. So it just prints out tacos are amazing forever. And that's because while, it's kind of in the name, that's why it's called a while loop, it'll run while this condition is true. So if this condition is always true, it never becomes false, then the program will loop forever. It'll stay in this loop forever unless you break out of it somehow. And yeah, so you can use a break statement if you want to, but what I'm trying to say is that you need to make sure that you provide a condition here that eventually becomes false, or you will get an infinite loop, which is not good for your program because then you get stuck. So let's just take a look at some other types of while loops just for practice. So number is equal to 21, and then while number is not equal to 20 or not equal to 0, excuse me, then what we want to do is print out this is the number, and then we want to do, let's update the number, decrement it. Number is equal to number minus 1. So let's run this before I explain it. This is the number 21, 20, all the way down to 1, and then it stops looping at that point and the program ends because there's no more code to run. So again, the way that this works is you start at numbers equal to 21, and the condition says that as long as number is not equal to 0, then you're going to loop on this while loop, okay? So when the program comes to this line here, it'll first check the condition, and then if it's true, it'll run this piece of code here. It's going to run one iteration of the loop. And then after it runs all the code within the while loop, it'll go back up here to check the condition again to see if it is still true or if it has become false. And it'll just repeat that process over and over and over until it becomes false, okay? So here's something cool about Python that is pretty unique to Python from what I've seen. So you can do else on the end of this, just like you have else for if statements, except that for while loops, this will only run when this eventually becomes false. So we can have something inside of here that says print the number is now 0, because it stops at 1, right? So the last number it'll print out is 1. So when it gets to that point, it'll check it again, and then it realizes that this is now false. So then it'll run this branch of code here, and then we'll print out this message. So run this, and there we go. We get the number is now 0, and it runs not in the middle, but at the end, because that's when the condition becomes false. So that's pretty freaking cool. You have like some sort of code you can add to your while loop that runs not until the while loop is done. Pretty awesome. Now, as we saw with the for loop, and I told you earlier, a for loop is pretty useful for looping through lists and going through lists one by one. So this is actually still possible with while loops, of course. There's many ways to do things in programming, as I've said before. So let's just have a list called I'm hungry, and I'll give you some values here. So I'm hungry. It's just going to have some random foods within it because I'm pretty hungry right now. And then we'll say while I'm hungry, then say food is equal to I'm hungry dot pop, and then print I am hungry and I want to eat, and then list the food you want to eat, so food. So this looks a little weird, right? Just because you maybe forgot what pop does, or you're not familiar with this kind of like what am I doing here, right? It's supposed to be a condition, right? And I passed in a list variable. So how does that work? So whenever you just provide a list variable inside of the condition part, it's going to evaluate to true. It's going to evaluate to true as long as the list is not empty. So if the list becomes empty at some point, or if it's empty to start with, then it will return false, and therefore the while loop will not loop, right? So that's kind of a cool trick you can do with Python. You can provide a variable if it has a list, and then it returns true or false depending on the emptiness of the list, okay? And then here we're making a new variable called food, setting it equal to I'm hungry dot pop. You may remember from the list episode that pop is a way of taking the last value on the list and then taking it off the list and then returning it. So it's basically being chopped off the end of the list and then placed into this variable here, which we are then using to print it out into the console. And that's why this is not an infinite loop, right? Because we are popping the value off the end of the list, this will eventually shrink down all the way to emptiness, and therefore this will eventually become false. If we didn't pop it, then this would be an infinite loop because we are not removing values from the end of the list like we should be. Okie dokie, so that's I think enough examples. So what I want to do now is give you a little challenge. So let me just go ahead and paste it all. So boom chicka boom boom. So here's the challenge. Make a piece of code that takes a string and validates it by seeing if it has at least one letter and one number. So you're essentially validating a password, all right? And if the string does not have at least one letter and one number, print invalid string. Otherwise, if the string has at least one letter and one number, print a valid string. Okay, so pause the video and see if you can do that. Essentially, you're just having a password variable with a random string, and then checking the value of that string to see if it contains at least one letter and one number to be a valid password. Okay, so see if you can do that. Okie dokie, so I'm gonna try now. So password is equal to, and then we'll just do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That's going to be invalid because there's no letter within it. Then now let's have some other variables like letter found is equal to false. Number found, if I can type it, is equal to false. And then we'll have position. This will be a variable that represents our current position within the string here, because the idea is that I'm going to be using a while loop, obviously, right? So I want to loop through each position in the string one by one to check to see if it's a letter or a number, okay? And while we're looping through each character in the string, if they happen to be either a letter or a number, we will change these two variables here to reflect that fact. And then after the while loop, after everything's done, we're going to check these again to see if they're both true. If they're both true, then it's valid. If one of them is true, it's false. If none of them are true, it's false, okay? So the way that we can loop through each of the characters in the string one by one is by doing while position is less than length of password. That's a simple Python function that returns the list of a string. And then we'll do letter is equal to password position. So we're getting the character at that position, storing into a temporary variable called letter. And then we're going to print it out just for verification. And we'll run this now. And here we go. It's just going to go forever. We didn't update position ever, so it's never going to the next position in the string. So we're going to do position is equal to position plus 1. Reload. And now we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Good. So it's going through the entire password. So here, let's just go ahead and check now to see if it's a letter or a number. So we can do if, and we can say letter dot is alpha, and that's just a simple function within Python that you can use upon a character to see if it's alphanumeric, which means it's a letter, okay? And then you have is digit to see if it's a digit, right? If this function here returns true, then we know it's a letter, so we'll say letter found is equal to true, and then otherwise, and then we'll have a second if statement, letter dot is digit. If that's true, then we'll say number found is equal to true. Awesome, that's all we need for that while loop. So after the while loop, now we want to do if letter found and number found print valid string or valid password, whatever you want to call it. Otherwise, else, then we'll do print invalid password because it has to satisfy both of these. That's why it's an and, okay? So let's run this and see what we get. We should get invalid, great. Then if we add a letter somewhere in this, it should be valid now. And great, it does. It is valid. Perfect. If we add nothing, then it's invalid because there's nothing to even loop through, and these are false by default anyway, so it gives us the correct response. And there you go. That's how you can do that little challenge. Hopefully you guys were able to solve it yourselves. If not, then don't worry. But for the future, just try and take your time, see if you can solve these challenges just by playing around. It's okay if you Google stuff. As a programmer, you're supposed to be able to Google stuff. And let's just say, for example, you didn't know how to loop through each character in a string within Python, then that's something you may want to Google, right? You can't be expected to know everything off the top of your head. That'll come through experience, all right? But anyway, you get the point. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you like this episode. And the next episode, we're going to learn about functions. Alright, so that's it for this video. Thanks for watching. In the description below, I'll leave a link to the code for this episode so you can check it out. You can bookmark it, come back to it later. If you forget any concepts or you just want to review the concepts I taught in this video, I'll mark everything up with comments so you can come back and read the code without having to rewatch the video. Although your reviews are greatly appreciated. So yeah, I'll leave a link for that in the description below, so make sure to check it out. And another thing is I'll leave a link to our Discord server. It's a big community for programmers, so you can ask for help on your programming projects if you're stuck on something, or maybe you can get some new friends. If you don't have any friends, there's lots of people here. It's growing really fast. You can find lots of people who are passionate about the same things as you. For example, if you like Minecraft Spigot development, you can find lots of people who like that. If you like C++, if you like Java, if you like web development, it's a really, really big programming community. So feel free to join. There's a link for that in the description below. And the last thing I want to tell you is that if you want to support this channel, you can click the join button below this video and you can join this channel as a member for as low as 99 cents a month, and you can cancel at any time. You get some cool perks like early access to all of my new videos, a cool rank on my Discord server like you see right here on the side, YouTube members, and also you get to see yourself on the screen like you see right now. So if that sounds cool to you, feel free to join. If you don't want to, that's fine. If you can't, that's okay too. I really just appreciate you watching the video anyway. And thank you. Thanks a lot. And that's it. So if you like this video, leave a like. If you want to see more, subscribe. And peace.